The field of physical medicine and rehabilitation, or PM&R for short, is starting to become more competitive, making it harder for medical students to match. With that said, I do want to share that I'm not a competitive applicant in the traditional sense, and in this video, I'm going to show you guys exactly what I mean. What's up, everybody? For those of you guys that are new here, my name is Luigi Gonzales, and I'm an incoming PM&R resident. If you guys haven't tuned into the first video that I made in this series of showing my ERAS residency application, make sure to check it out, because in that video, I shared with you guys my whole application, basically my geographic preferences, my activities, leadership positions, all of those things. But in this video, what I wanted to highlight is just purely talking about the numbers, because I feel like that's something that when I was a medical student, something that I really focused on a lot. And in terms of the data that I'm able to find through the NRMP, that's also something that they show. So I think it's better if we go through each thing, analyze it, and then I'll share with you guys my numbers and see where I fit in. Because, you know, at the end of the day, I was able to match. So if that's able to provide some medical students some sense of clarity, then I'd be more than happy that I made this video. So with that said, let's go check out the current numbers for the NRMP PM&R match. Okay, so looking at the data right here, the first thing that we're going to take a look at is the mean number of contiguous ranks for PM&R. So what exactly does contiguous ranks mean? And this is something that I actually was kind of confused about in the beginning, but to summarize it, it's basically the number of items listed in your rank list at the end when you finished all of your interviews. So to clarify, some PM&R programs have an advanced program and a categorical program. Advanced program means that you're only getting accepted to that PM&R program in the second, third, and fourth year of your residency training. Your first year of residency training, you'll have to go somewhere else for the preliminary medicine year or surgical year, depending on what you do. Now, categorical means that that program is accepting you for all 4 years. So there's some programs out there that have both options, meaning you can put number 1 is categorical, meaning you want to go there for all 4 years, and you can put your number 2 rank as the advanced program, meaning you want to go there for years 2, 3, and 4, and then you'll do your first year somewhere else. So even though it's the same program, that will count as 2 contiguous ranks. And that was kind of like the confusing part for me, because I couldn't understand how one program counts as 2 ranks when looking at this number. So when we look at the data, it says that for people who matched, the average number is 13.7, meaning in their rank list, they had about 14 different things on there. Now, they might only have gotten 12 interviews, but for some of those programs that they interviewed for, they offered the 2 different categorical or advanced, like programs that they could list down in the rank list. And then for people who didn't match, they only had 5.1, so around 5. And that's a pretty big difference. Basically, the number of interviews that you get from programs, that you applied for, there's a pretty big difference between people who match and don't match. So what exactly does this mean? This basically means that you have to be smart with where you apply. You have to, really show interest. It's not good enough to just apply everywhere. It's also important to show your interest to specific programs so that you get that interview invite. Okay, number 2, mean number of distinct specialties ranked. This one, I feel like, isn't that much different. It's 1.6 for people who match and then 2.3 for people who didn't match. This basically means how many specialties did you apply for? Did you apply for a backup, or did you apply for, like another specialty that you're interested in? Those kind of things. And I feel like we don't really need to get too into the details for that. But basically, PM&R does like applicants that show true interest in PM&R. So in your application, because you're limited to 10 different activities, if it's showing like emergency medicine, family medicine, or involvement in other things and not purely PM&R, that's not as strong as somebody who for all 10 activities is all like PM&R related, because it is a field that is not as well known. So they want to make sure that medical students know what they're signing up for. Number 3, USMLE Step 1 score. So honestly, like from now going forward, this number wouldn't really matter anymore, because it's pass fail, unless there's people that like medical students that may have taken step 1, then did like a PhD and then applied, then that would matter more. But for the most part, it's kind of hard to compare that number, like a step 1 score, versus others who just got a pass, So that's something that I feel like is self-explanatory there. Mean USMLE Step 2 score. Now for this one, for people who matched, they got a 248. And then for people who didn't match, it's a 236. It's a decent size difference if you think about it, because even though it's only 12 points, in terms of the percentiles, I believe that is a pretty big gap. I think 236 is around like 15th percentile or 20th percentile, but 248 is 50th percentile. So, you know, like there's a big difference in terms of where you are when you get your score. There's like a bar graph that shows like which section you're in, which percentile you're in. So, you know, like it is a big difference there. So definitely prioritize getting a good step 2 score. Next, mean number of research experiences, 3.4 for people who matched and 3.3 for people who didn't match. What does that mean? The numbers are pretty much the same. Research isn't what makes or breaks your application or your chances of matching into PM&R. The main thing is that they want to see that you do some research. Mean number of abstracts and publications, 8.6 versus 6.4. Again, that's like two poster presentation difference. I don't see that as that big of a difference. Further emphasizing the fact that I don't think research is that big of an impact on your application. It's good to show that you do research, especially if it's in a PM&R related field, but more so because it shows your interest in PM&R rather than you do a lot of research. Work experiences, not much difference there. Mean number of volunteering experiences, again, not that much there, but at the same time, there is a number of around 5, meaning they want to see that you do a lot of community service, that you care about more than just studying and doing well on your test, that you care about patients and helping those who are less fortunate outside of just in the hospital. Percentage who are AOA members. People who matched, 13.9% of them are AOA, and people who didn't match, 0% of them were AOA. Basically, if you have AOA, you're honoring most of your electives. You're probably getting really good shelf scores, meaning really good step scores, meaning a lot of involvement like in your school. So it kind of goes hand in hand with everything else that we've talked about before. AOA means that you're, you know, like top cream of the crop in your medical school. So that's why usually people who are AOA end up matching. But again, if we look at that number, 13.9%, not a lot of people who match into PM&R are AOA, which means if you're interested in PM&R, yes, try your best to honor everything, do as well as you can in your classes, do as well as you can in your step, research, everything. But don't stress out if you don't get AOA or, oh, I didn't honor certain like rotations. The main thing with PM&R is from my perspective, I feel like is how well you can connect with patients, how well you can provide clinical care. And that doesn't necessarily reflect in grades all the time, because a lot of it comes down to, you know, like what shelf score you got. But in your evaluations, it's important to hopefully get a good evaluation that details your clinical care, the way that you approach patients, the way that you're able to connect with them, the way that you're able to work in a team, because PM&R is a very team-based specialty. Those kind of things are what's important, more so than just showing that, oh, I got honors here. Okay, next, percentage who graduated from one of the 40 US med schools with the highest NIH funding. Not much difference there. It's basically that whole question of like, oh, does going to a top 40 med school help you with your residency, like getting into residency? I mean, ideally, like the way that I can see it is connections. Like if you're in a more, let's say like higher level med school, like a top 40 med school where you get a lot of NIH funding, that means a lot of research is being done there, which means a lot of possible collaborations with other programs, other med schools, which increases your chances of making connections with other people from other places. That's the only way I can think about it. Again, research isn't really the main thing that will differentiate people who match and not match. So I feel like this data point isn't really helpful. Percentage who have a PhD degree, 1.9% for people who matched. Again, not a lot of MD PhDs typically pursue PM&R, but you know, there's some that do, and it doesn't really make you much better than other people. The MD PhD route is more so if you are interested in also doing a lot of research in your future career, then that's why you would do it. Percentage who have another graduate degree, so 16% for people who matched, and then 12.5% for people who didn't match. I think that's more of applicants who maybe did like a master's degree before they got into medical school, or during medical school they took a year off to pursue a master's degree. Again, that's more of personal interest. I don't think that has a big impact on how competitive you are as an applicant. Okay, so now that we finished looking at all of that data, I wanted to share with you guys my personal stats. And I wanted to start off first with my leadership activities. So if you watched my previous video, I did I showed you guys every single activity that I did, and a good amount of those included leadership. And if I'm going to summarize it, I listed down two or three leadership positions in my medical school alone. But what I feel like makes me a stronger applicant for PM&R is that I listed 3 leadership positions in national PM&R organizations. So, with the emphasis on, do you know the specialty? Are you committed to the specialty? And what have you done for it? Leadership positions in national organizations that most program directors or interviewers would know about, that makes a pretty big deal. So that's why I think it's important to get involved in those things as early as you can. And for me, I only got involved with them in my 3rd year, and for some of them like late in my 3rd year. That's because I found out about PM&R late in my 2nd year / early in my 3rd year is when I fully committed. So that's kind of why, I didn't get to have that opportunity of getting involved much earlier on. Okay, and then next that I want to talk about is my research. And I know I've emphasized a lot in the first 10 minutes of this video that research isn't what makes or breaks your chances of matching into PM&R, but my approach to it was that I know research is something that I like to do and something that I want to keep doing during residency and maybe even as an attending. And the places that like research coincide with the places that I want to do residency in, which is an academic institution. I know there's PM&R programs out there that are more community-based, that don't do as much research and focus a lot more on community, like outreach. And as much as I like to do that, I feel like research is where I truly want to be in. So I wanted to go into an academic setting, which is why I kept doing research. More so because I just like doing research, I like, if there's an interesting case, I want to write it up. I want to maybe submit it to a conference, especially if my school or my research lab is able to fund it. Free trip, basically. And at the same time, going to those conferences, meeting new people, it's just fun. So I feel like that's why I did it. And at the same time, I know that I wanted to go to an academic program, which is why I did a lot of research. So looking into my numbers, I know in the video that I posted where I went over my whole application, you can see all of my research publications there. Like you can just pause it, read it, scroll to the next page, pause it, But breaking it down to numbers, so peer-reviewed journal articles and abstracts, which is full-on published journals. Like you can Google my name and you can see that I published these things. I had 3 publications in terms of that. And 2 of them, I was a 2nd author, and 1 of them, I was a 3rd author. So again, it's nice to have 3 on there, but if you take a look at it, it's not crazy good because I'm not 1st author for any of them. 2nd author is okay, that's not too bad. 3rd author, I feel like it's kind of like meh, but then 2 2nd authors is good, but it's not the same as 1st author, you're in charge of this. The next is peer-reviewed journal articles and abstracts other than published. So these are the ones that are still in the process. And for that one, I had 5. So 2 of them are papers that I listed down. 1 I was a 2nd author in, and the other one I was a 1st author in. So I feel like that's kind of where I made it up from what I'm lacking in terms of the already published section. Meaning I told the programs, I have 1 paper that's on the way to being published. It's submitted. So it's on the way to getting there. And then I listed 5. 2 of them were papers, as I mentioned. The other 3 were abstracts, meaning abstracts that I submitted. And the reason why I listed out those abstracts was more so to show certain programs that like, hey, during my away rotations, I was still able to crank out some abstracts with them, even though I'm just a visiting medical student. I like to get involved. I initiated that, hey, this is a good case for us to write up. I can take lead in it. So, it shows that no matter where I'm at, not just in my home school where I'm connected with people where it's easy for me to crank out abstracts, I'm in a completely separate place that I've only been working in for a week or 2 at that time, and I was still able to initiate, hey, let's make an abstract together to submit to this PM&R conference. And that shows initiative, shows interest in research, and it shows, just like being adaptable to different environments. Okay, next is poster presentations. So I had 14 poster presentations throughout my whole 4 years of med school. Some people will say that's a lot. Some people will say it's not. Again, it's all about perspective and what you want to highlight. A lot of the weight of the research that you do also is what kind of research is it? A lot of my research is stemming from basic science because my main involvement in medical school was being a member of the peripheral nerve lab, which is a basic science lab. So I feel like that differentiates me a lot from other medical students where a lot of their research is more of clinical, maybe like quality improvement, like doing surveys, whereas mine is I go to an actual lab, dissect mice, like image the muscles, like those kind of things. And it has been brought up in my interviews as a strong point that I have in my application. Oral presentations, I have 9. Oral presentations definitely way more than poster presentations. It's just because of like the setting of how you're presenting it. Oral presentations, you typically get a stage or a podium to speak, and then people are seated and just looking at your poster itself. Poster presentations, you're more likely standing in a hall with a bunch of other posters. People walk by, they can stop and like chat with you about your work. But it's not the same as you're standing in a podium, you have a PowerPoint presentation of your research and you're presenting to hundreds of people. Really scary, but at the same time, really worth it. Next is non-peer-reviewed online publications. I have 5, and what I listed for that are basically like if you write, like an article that's not really scientific, more of like a, what do they call it, like an op-ed piece, something like that, or like a creative humanities type of piece. Those are the things that I listed down here because those are non-peer-reviewed. So I had 5. One of them involved a pm&r like humanities journal. One of them was my med school's journal. I also talked about a recorded interview that was published at a website that I did. One of them was for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society because I'm a cancer survivor and they were able to share my story, so they published that too. And I think another one was also for another pm&r journal, so I was able to get 2 of those. So again, showing interest in pm&r. And then there's other articles where I had 7, and this is more so because pm&r has something called Rehab in Review, where we summarize recently published like impactful articles to make it easier for readers who may not have the time to read the whole publication. So medical students can write these summaries and then they get published and sent out to people. So I had 7 of those. So overall, I had a lot of things listed under research publications. If we add it all up, like let's see, what is this, like around 30, I want to say? No, it's more than 30. So 3 plus 5 is 8, plus 14 is 22, plus 9, that's 31, plus 5, 36, plus 7, 43. So yeah, so these 43 things listed down, and none of them were double dipping because you could submit an abstract to 2 different conferences where it gets accepted as a poster in one and an oral presentation in the other, but then you don't want to list them both down. I would just list down the oral presentation because, again, as I mentioned, it's more impactful, which means that the poster presentation doesn't really get listed down. Because I feel like if you double dip, you're kind of just fluffing it up for no reason. Like they'll read your study, get an idea of what it is, but you don't need to list it like 3 times if it gets accepted to 3 different places. Okay, so we went over my leadership, we went over research. Now we're gonna go over what I feel like most of you guys are more interested in, which is grades and step scores. So we'll start with grades. In my first year of medical school, it was all pass-fail, so nothing really separating me there. Everybody got a pass. My second year of med school, that's when we were taking micro, pharm, and physiology, and then anatomy wasn't in 3rd year. Clinical foundations was another one. But basically, I think there were 5 classes total that we took in my second year of med school, and I was only able to honor 1 out of the 4, which was clinical foundations. So everything else, it was just pass. My med school doesn't do the high pass, honors, high pass, pass. So it was either you get the honors or you don't. My 3rd year of med school, that's when you take all of your core rotations. Again, I was only able to honor 1, which is my family medicine rotation. Such a great rotation. I really liked it. And I honestly feel like it's one of my weaknesses is test taking, and my shelf exam for every single rotation is what honestly cut me off from getting honors, because I remember for some of them, was it like OBGYN or was it psychiatry, where I was literally like 1 or 2 points away from the cutoff on the shelf exam to get the honors, and I was so mad because I had a good time with the rotation. I never really talk about like, oh, I worked so hard to get honors in a rotation. I just feel like whenever I get placed in a rotation, I end up enjoying it so much, but it's always the shelf exam that prevents me from getting that honors. But whatever, I still matched on my number one. I'm not gonna keep dwelling on that now. So yeah, second year of med school, only honored one. Third year of med school, only honored one core rotation. Fourth year of med school, you don't get to put every single thing you do in your application. You maybe get to put the first 3 rotations that you have. And the first 3 rotations that I had was one PM&R rotation, two PM&R rotations. One was my home rotation and the other was my first away rotation, and I got honors in both. For the third block of my med school, or my fourth year of med school, I used that to study for STEP, so I couldn't really put anything in my application for that. So yeah, you know, like I wasn't a crazy like honoring everything med student. I wasn't crazy good like that. Wish I was, but I wasn't. So again, I still matched on my number one, and it is a pretty competitive like residency, I want to say. So, you know, emphasizing that PM&R isn't really all score based. And to highlight that even more, let's go talk about my STEP scores. So for step 1, as I mentioned, if you watch that video of me going over my whole application, I talked about how I failed step 1 on the first try. And what I did was that I used the character count to explain. There's a section where you can explain breaks or gaps in your medical school education, and I used the full character count to explain not just what happened. I barely talked about what happened. I more so used up the space to talk about what I did to recover and to make sure that that's not going to happen again. Talked about the learning points that I made, and in a lot of my interviews, it got brought up, and I ended up explaining even further and kind of giving reassurance to the interviewers that it's not going to happen again, and that, you know, like certain things happen in life, and that's why I had a hard time. But at the same time, now I learned to separate things out so that nothing will really affect my professional life as much as it did at that time. So yeah, that's already a red flag in my application because I failed, even though I passed right away. And I fortunately didn't need to take a full year off to retake step 1, which is good because I didn't need to extend my education. So, you know, like there's a lot of things that I was able to draw out from that, and it became a talking point for a lot of my interviews. So now going on to step 2. So ideally, what I had in mind was that, okay, I didn't do well in step 1. It's a red flag on my application. Let me prove them wrong. Let me rock step 2. And I tried my best to. I studied so hard for it. But there's literally just something about me and exams that just do not get along well. For step 2, I only got a 228, which is very, very low. If we look at that data, as I mentioned, people who matched into PM&R averaged a 248, almost 250. People who didn't match averaged a 236, meaning I was lower than the average for people who didn't match. So if you can imagine that feeling of I got my score back a month before applications are due, I was freaking out because my score was bad. And at the same time, I have to submit this application and I don't have time to really pivot specialties, nor did I want to pivot to a different specialty because I knew PM&R is what I really wanted to do for the rest of my life. It was hard. Mentally, it was really, really hard, but I knew deep inside all I could focus on was just my away rotations. Because when I saw my score, I was actually in one of my away rotations, and that whole day, I was literally just trying to brace through the rest of the day so I can go to my Airbnb and just relax and take my mind off of it. It was a rough day. I was having almost a mental breakdown, but at the same time, I talked to the residents in my away rotation. They did really well to reassure me, and I honestly am very, very grateful for them for doing so. So yeah, looking at all of the numbers, that is my whole application broken down into the numbers. Again, if you want to see everything in full detail, you could see the application in my previous video, but this number is more of a summary for everything that I've done, all of the important data points to take a look at. And hopefully, if you could take anything away from this, watch the first 10 minutes again where I did a breakdown of the NRMP data, because I feel like that's the most accurate information you can get whenever you're asking what are my chances of getting in, just take a look at that data, look at the averages, see where you stand there, and see where you can make up certain things. And if you have any questions, always feel free to leave a comment down below. Follow me on Instagram or my TikTok, and then also leave some comments there. You know, you can feel free to DM me if you have any specific questions. And I also do offer a one-on-one mentorship. You can check the link down below, and then we can schedule a one-on-one meeting just to kind of discuss and see like how we can help you out. But with that said, thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.